Episode 165.
So you need materials to forge a silver weapon. Training new recruits too. That's quite the ambition.
So if you want another championship, you'd better seize this opportunity.
The members of Team Tiny Herb listened to the conversation between these two great gods, their minds filled with uncertainty. Could it be that Ye Qiu still intends to return to the Pro League? But the problem is, this guy just retired a few days ago, and he's already going back on his word. Is there any rhyme or reason to this? Alright, name your materials. A torrent of text flashed onto the screen. It was clearly copy-pasted, not typed out on the spot. You really did come prepared. Wang Jiaxi examined the materials. They were all from the 25 to 30 level range, typical drops for that stage. There are dungeon drops, hidden boss loot, wild boss spoils, and some that just look plain worthless. But a player of Wang Jiaxi's caliber had at least a passing familiarity with the equipment editing system. This was especially true given that the technical department of his Tiny Herb Club was currently considered top tier in the entire league. After the era of Excellent Dynasty, the fact that Team Tiny Herb managed to secure 2 championships all on their own can't be said to be unrelated to this reason. The materials for these custom weapons were just laid out right in front of me, plain as day. Aren't you afraid of revealing how the weapon is made? After all, self-made equipment is always top secret. Do they think we can't see through it?
Or is there some trick hidden within it?
Wang Jiaxi pondered this privately for a moment, but he said nothing. He immediately contacted the guild leader of Herb Garden on this side, Carriage Seed, explained what he needed. And at this moment, Qi Qiangzi was actually right outside the arena. This guy had been secretly following along the whole time, just to watch the show. He didn't dare get too close, only watching from a distance, so no one noticed him. But when they got to the arena, they couldn't figure out which room the targets had entered. Frustrated, they were already preparing to leave. Just then, a message from Blazing Embers suddenly popped up. Of course, Qi Qianzi knew this character was a witch. It was either Jiexi the Great God or Ye Luo Wuti. One of those two must be Wang Jiexi. Plantago Xi looked over the list that had been sent. He immediately rushed to the guild warehouse and withdrew everything he could get his hands on. He then contacted Blazing Fire's End, got the arena room number, and rushed the items over. He'd brought multiples of every material. Clearly, Wang Jiaxi knew that while this was called placing a bet, their odds of winning were slim. It's practically handing Ye Qiu a free win. If it were up to Qi Qiangzi, he'd never agree to such terms. At the very least, he'd adjust the odds. But in Wang Jiaxi's eyes, these low-level materials were nothing. He could afford to treat it as tuition for his players' training. With the materials secured and Liu Xiaobi accepting the wager, his character finally entered the 1-on-1 arena.
Wow, that was quick. What else would you expect from the champions? Enough talk.
Liu Xiaobi's fighting spirit was at its peak. Knowing his opponent was the legendary Ye Qiu, he held nothing back. His famed pro, League Hand Speed, erupted at full power from the very first move. On the battlefield, Sword Light instantly crisscrossed the air. The arena's recording function was quite different from the one used in the wild. It doesn't use the player's perspective, but the system's god's eye view for recording. On replay, you can switch angles. First person overhead, wide angle, close up, whatever angle you want. It's obviously much better for analysis. Even Wang Jiaxi, when they watched a match, would immediately switch to this god's eye view once the fight began, allowing them full control. Liu Xiaobi launched a preemptive strike, seemingly rash. His attacks were methodical, not frantic. He knew the unspecialized class was full of unpredictable tricks, enough to catch even a pro player off guard. Only then did Liu Xiaobi unleash his hand speed in a frantic burst, hoping to overwhelm his opponent with a relentless barrage, leaving no room for any tricks, or to even think about any tricks. Wang Jiaxi watched and gave a slight, approving nod. After all, he's a core team member. Liu Xiaobi's mentality was already quite mature. His play was handled quite adeptly. In contrast, although Xiao Yun has played in nearly half the matches this season, still seemed rather rash and impatient. But winning, that's still a tall order. The thought had barely crossed Wang Jixi's mind when, on screen, Lord Grim launched his counter-attack. The tempestuous sword, light of Liu Xiaobi's swordsman, vanished in an instant. What followed was a dazzling display of spear thrusts, gunshots, sword slashes, and fist strikes. Liu Xiaobi's swordsman was forced back with every slash, parrying blow after blow. Yet he still fought on, weaving and searching for an opening. Well done. Wang Jixi typed out 2 words, a gesture of encouragement for Liu Xiaobi. This was exactly what he wanted to see. Defeat, but not defeatism. A moment later, Liu Xiaobi was ultimately defeated. The system automatically transferred the wagered stakes into Lord Grim's inventory. I'll go. Liang Fang jumped out, trying to take the field.
Go clear the level first.
Ye Qiu kicked him out of the room. Tang Ru, having received the message, went out and created a new room. This time, the others didn't even bother to follow and spectate. The fight with the rookie battle mage, Han Yanru, was frankly nothing to write home about. Moments later, Liang Fang and Tang Ru returned to the group. As expected, Tang Ru had lost again, without a shred of suspense. Liang Fang took to the stage with his materials, and the battle commenced. Soon Liang Fang felt a familiar sensation. This feeling, it was just like when he was fighting Cold Mist. Only now the roles were reversed. Liang Fang was the one struggling. Liang Fang was a wild and hot, blooded man, and a moment like this only stoked his fighting spirit. He frequently employed mutually destructive tactics, yet this was not a loss of composure. This was a fighting style only a berserker like Liang Fang could afford to use. That's because after a berserker changes class, they learn a skill called Blood Awakening. With this passive skill, once the berserker's health drops below 50%, it boosts their strength attribute, and the lower their health, the greater the boost. In other words, the lower a berserker's health, the higher their attack power. So in a late game, mutually assured destruction brawl, the opponent always gets the short end of the stick. Liang Fang was fighting with such ferocity that Ye Qiu didn't seem to be handling it easily either. He was forced into desperate, head-on clashes time and again. Both sides had taken damage. Although Liang Fang's berserker had lost more health, he was confident his damage boosting passive would kick in. Liang Fang's confidence grew with every passing moment. Liang Fang kept a close watch on Lord Grim's health, watching it drop from half to a third, then a quarter, then a fifth. But while his own health was dropping faster, his attack power was climbing higher and higher. Almost there, almost there. Liang Fang kept counting down their remaining life until it finally dropped to a critical low. Liang Fang's expression shifted. He realized to his shock that he could no longer afford to trade blows. He could see it now. Just 2 more exchanges, and he could bring Lord Grim down. But the problem is, he'd be the one to fall first in the next exchange.
How could I be this unlucky?
Liang Fang slammed her mouse down in a fit of rage. Immediately after, Liang Fang heard Lord Grim say,
Thanks for the hard work. Just 1 more to go.
谢死带。
It wasn't bad luck after all. He had already calculated the outcome of their clash, so he stood there, effortlessly trading blows with Liang Fang. This kind of judgment wasn't that Liang Fang didn't want to make it, but he simply couldn't. He didn't know the stats of that opponent's silver weapon. If it were just a normal weapon, you could probably make a rough guess based on the damage you took. But the problem is, this guy's weapon is ever changing, with each form possessing a different attack capability. And the unsigned specialist skill set is so complex. With 120 skills, who knows what level he's upgraded each one to, it's simply impossible to estimate. In the end, Liang Fang, hoping to gamble on luck, lost to Lord Grim's precise calculations.